I'm going to talk about systematizing production operations featuring Reddit Control Tower. So I've been working in SRE for around 8 years, mostly at startups and smaller companies doing kitchen sink SRE, so owning pretty much everything besides like writing the feature code. For the past year, I've been at Reddit. I initially started out on the traffic team focusing on controls for edge traffic management, and I have recently partnered with the risk team to work on general production management controls. You can see some of my beautiful cats and a stuffed frog that I sewed named Fairbanks. So what's the problem that I'm here to talk about today? So it's 2025. Our systems and services are very sophisticated. We have auto-scaling, self-healing autonomous systems and services, but they don't totally manage themselves. Engineers still have to sometimes click buttons in production or do, the spiritual equivalent of clicking buttons like, a CLI or what have you. Some of this is day-to-day management and some of it is in incident conditions, and especially when things are broken in an incident, these kind of changes need to happen fast. I'll be specific with some examples. You can basically break these down into 2 categories, things that are managed by autonomous systems or they're declaratively configured and managed by reconciliation systems, but these systems are imperfect, so sometimes they get it wrong or sometimes they break. Or they're slow and in emergency conditions, we need to bypass them. So some things are restarting or scaling a workload, traffic management, so draining, black holing, blocking bad actors, reverting a code or config change. And then we have sort of fundamentally one-time operations that a system doesn't really manage. Things like restoring from a backup, inputting a secret value, a manual failover, and if you have any configuration systems that are non-destructive, you might have to do manual deletions and cleanups when you get rid of stuff. So if any of you are at companies where you don't have to manually do any of these things ever, congratulations. You kind of played yourself there because you're not going to have a job. Feel free to send me your resume. But really, not everyone has all these problems, so these are some of the ones that we have at Reddit. So really, we have to do these prod changes, but that's not the problem. That's just a fact of life. The problem is that they're really scary to do. When you are the person who's operating a system, service, or like a technical domain, you don't know necessarily where to go to do the change. You may not have access or know how to get it. You don't know who to ask or who to tell when you've done it. And sometimes the set of manual steps is really long and can be error prone if you've ever seen a very long run book when you go to do something. And if you are the owner of a service platform or domain, you are sick of getting paged just to do the thing. You want to allow other people to do it, but you don't know how to prevent them from doing it wrong, and you want to know canonically when someone has done the thing. Now, a side note, often, obviously, the operators, the users, and the owners of these things are the same people, right? We run our own services, we use our own platforms and infrastructure, but especially like in incident situations, we don't always have everyone in the room. So it's helpful to think about the users as people that are not necessarily like deep domain experts of these things. So we have to make these prod changes, and they're scary. And we want to make them better, right? They're scary on a personal level, and also they're scary in terms of like the impact that they can have. They're dangerous, right? So it helps to have a framework to talk about this. These manual tasks that we have to do either every day or as part of incident response are admin operations, and the interfaces for performing these operations are admin APIs. That's what we need. They're what we need to do and have to administrate our production systems and services. So even if you're not talking about admin APIs or thinking about things in this framework, you have them, right? It's any interface for touching prod. So they exist, but it might be, for example, like the AWS console, or it could be kube control on a developer's laptop, or God forbid, it could be a script in a repo that someone has to run when something is broken. But in an ideal world, when we are thinking about these and we're controlling them, we want them to have some characteristics, right? We want them to be discoverable. So when someone needs to make a production change, they know where to go to find that tool. A consistent interface, so if they know how to do one change, they probably know how to do another. Clear and limited intent, they know exactly what they're getting when they do this thing. Limited access, so you know if you can click the button, it's okay for you to click the button, right? You have the right expertise. And auditable, so we know exactly what's changed across all these different technical surfaces. So we have this problem, which is we have to change things in prod manually, and it's scary to do, both for the people who own the thing and the people that actually have to operate the thing. And we have a way to talk and think about these types of changes. So at Reddit, what we did to fix our admin APIs was we built Reddit Control Tower. This is our actual technical framework. So it's a self-service platform for building and using our admin APIs to manage production at Reddit. As a side note, there are obviously products and services you can buy to fulfill this need, things like runbook automation type stuff. But for us, this is really mostly an interface problem. We have the technical tools for these things. We just want to stitch them together and present them a certain way. So the management overhead of running the system that we built is really very low. And this gives us full control over, how we present it to our users, and we can tailor it to our needs. And also security is really important. Like, it's always really important, but especially in this case, because we're talking by nature about high-risk production operations that we're doing in incidents. And we basically eliminate a whole class of security and operational issues by neither having to open our network to a third party to do these things, nor run a third-party agent in our clusters. But that might be the right option for you. You might have a tool that does this already, and that's awesome. So what did we actually build? It's pretty simple. We've got a few pieces here. We've got the CLI on the developer's laptop up on the top. We've got the admission server, which controls admission into the service, the control tower servers that they contain the actual business logic of the admin operations, and then a framework for developing, so contributing to Reddit Control Tower and adding new operations as an owning team. We will walk through top to bottom and talk a little bit about each piece. So why just build a CLI? Couple reasons. Our users are engineers, right? This is a familiar interface for them, and often they're already in the terminal if they're troubleshooting in an incident. And it's really easy to build. It's a low development lift. And when people want to come and contribute their admin operations to our platform, they don't have to have front-end expertise, or we don't have to have the extra expertise to build a front-end framework that they can use to contribute things consistently. We have an example of, a simplified example of one of our commands here. They are namespaced by the product domain, or technical domain really. So traffic, compute, storage would be an example of the namespace, and then the actual operation that you're doing. So traffic drain, we have a parameter specific to the operation, so what cluster, and then a general purpose parameter. I won't lie to you and say that we require this ever right now, but the concept is to require a structured justification so that when we're doing a high-risk prod operation, we always have to give it either a JIRA ticket or an incident number so we know why we're doing it. And that can be persisted throughout the system. So going down, we're going into our network. This is just a simplified example of what that interface looks like. Some of the data and metadata we need, the command, the parameters, the ID token. We have gone through an Okta login workflow, or, in the terminal, and then that token is getting passed, the justification, and this is obviously on VPN traffic only. And we get to the admission server. So this handles the authentication of the operation, so only letting people do the things they're supposed to be able to do, and the emitting canonical events to our production event log, so we know exactly what's happened. The people implementing it, they have no choice about this, right? They have to use our auth, and they have to use our eventing, so they can't do secret stuff. This is a really important piece because it controls the access. So we own this, SRE does, and we worked really closely with security to make sure it was meeting their needs in terms of access control. Here is an example of what the config might look like. So the admission server checks what groups are allowed to do the operation and what control tower to route that operation to, and then it passes it on. So the control towers, these are containing the actual business logic of the operation. They are owned by the teams that implement that work. So it's important that we're trying not to build like a God server that has privileged access and tokens to touch everything dangerous and broad. So these need to be federated, right? They have to only have the secrets relevant to the things that they need to change. And with this distributed ownership model, we have to do a lot less of the work of running these systems. So they come in two flavors: a simple flavor, which basically needs to talk to an external system or an internal system, and then cluster agents, which manage deep cluster operations. So they actually are deployed to all of our prod clusters and managing things inside of there. And then we have the actual development framework piece, which lives in the repo. So we provide service templates and shared libraries for things like auth and Slack notifications. This is all structured as a mono repo. We have found that to be the easiest way for us to both provide these libraries, templates, code generation, helpful validation for people contributing, and then also we have governance. So we care, and security cares a lot about what goes on in the control tower, so we can put the checks that we need here. And it reduces the clicks to launch a new control tower because there are plenty of manual steps of creating a new service, creating a new repo that those customer teams get to skip. Yeah, so we built this thing to solve this problem, and what happened as a result? I think I'm talking really fast. I'm like way ahead of time, so prepare your questions, and I'll try to slow it down a little bit. So what happened? So I will say this is still pretty new. What we've done basically thus far is we went through like a V0 where we implemented white glove, one single admin operation that we thought would be very impactful. And then we took this past quarter to like scale the architecture and add 2 new control towers and a handful of new operations and kind of like the new model. So that's where we're at right now. But I will say there has been, in my experience as someone who has built a lot of tools and platforms, the greatest interest from customer teams that I've ever experienced. Everyone we talked to has said, oh my gosh, yes, we need something like that. Either we have already built something internal to our team to use to put admin stuff in, or we're thinking about it, or we're just doing jank stuff and we want it. So there are many plans to work with teams on this, but we have had some, even kind of in our early days, some big wins here. As Reddit's platform gets more global and we deploy infrastructure in more different regions, traffic management has become extremely important for us. In the olden times, pre-RCT, these traffic weights were managed by a very privileged group of traffic engineers who were inputting numbers into like a freeform text box in a UI that only some people can see, super error prone and hidden. And after putting it into RCT, this has been exposed to a greater group of engineers. You can see exactly what's been done and when it's been done. Here's an example of a Slack notification here, cleaned up a little bit, so all the secrets stay secret. And we have seen really heavy use of this both in testing and rolling out new clusters and regions, and also in some very impactful incidents where the folks who were in the room were able to do the traffic shift. We were able to see the canonical event when it happened, match that up with the logs to, verify that it's doing what we want. And we're in process to train many more groups of people to use this so that it can be like a no-brainer immediate mitigation step whenever we're in any regional incident. So this was a really big win, and this has given us, the confidence that there's a lot of benefit in this product, and we have big plans over the next 6 months or so. We have plans to build a number of new control towers and a lot of new operations, and this is really partially a social change that needs to happen, because when people are, building tools that touch prod, or they are going to do a prod operation in an incident or day-to-day, we need them to think, I need to go to RCT to do it. So there's a lot of communication that has to happen. We're gonna be doing trainings, we're gonna continue to be doing marketing about this. And there is like an infinite amount of improvement that could happen to the technical framework. If we get this in a nice place, we might consider open sourcing it if we think there's any benefit in, the framework for like deploying new services that have a consistent interface. Yeah, some takeaways. I encourage you guys to think about your admin APIs. Like I said, you have them even if you're not talking about them in this way, and they probably don't meet the bar that you would want them to meet if you sit down and think about it in terms of consistency, accessibility, safety. Consider providing a platform for something like this. It doesn't have to be a big technical lift, but if you give people a place to go to do a thing in an emergency, they know that they can look there, and they have an expectation of a certain amount of safety and visibility for that change. I think you'll see great improvements. Engineers will thank you. So the people who are managing things will thank you because it's less scary and it's easier to do the changes they need. Security will thank you because you're putting controls in front of high-risk operations. And eventually, your leadership will thank you when this helps resolve incidents faster and causes fewer incidents because of fat fingering. So yeah, thank you.